Welcome, Chosen X. You awaken in a room that feels older than your memory yet fresh as a waking breath. Light comes through a thin opening and pools at your feet like a quiet promise. The air shifts in a way that is not pressure but invitation. Your breathing arranges itself to a new cadence and the ordinary world accepts a subtle tilt. A mirror leans against the wall. It does not provide a simple likeness. When you approach, you see a ledger of choices, doors left ajar and small unfinished dialogues. The glass does not flatter. It returns an honest inventory of what you carry and what you are summoned to bear. This mirror asks for courage more than vanity. A half-open door sits near the threshold. Beyond it, faint voices fold and unfold like fabric tossed by wind. Some approaches are drawn to you because you offer a depth they sense as a harbor. Others draw back because the depth you bring is a demand they have not authorized. Your passage through rooms alters the temperature of gatherings. Presence becomes an event rearranges comfort. A hush settles in your chest that keeps counterpoint with restless sparks. Your words do not skim. They land like stones and create ripples in settled bowls. Conversations that once flowed easily tighten when you enter the frame. You do not command this change. It is the consequence of being perceived without the usual softening. An echo follows your steps. It is not mimicry but a ledger of impressions. People recall how a pause with you held gravity. That memory can plant new longing or trigger fear. Meeting something so unvarnished can feel like a summons to repair the self, and some refuse the summons. Private signs arise while you are alone. A cup untouched named restraint. A fallen chair hints at interrupted resolve. Rain washing the window names both clearing and loss. You learn to receive these signs as dispatches from an interior geography that maps your duty. Night brings a lighthouse rhythm in your chest. The light stays steady and refuses spectacle. It asks you to be faithful when the ocean prefers fog. Sometimes vessels answer. Sometimes the water keeps its distance. Either way, the light teaches steadiness. You cultivate small practices that are not for display but for keeping. A turned page is a vow. A whispered melody becomes compact. These private acts preserve your center so you may approach the world whole and not fragmented. Do not scorn those who step away. Retreat is an old instrument of safety. Your clarity touches gears built to preserve sameness, and they will groan. People will name reasons that mask a deeper recoil. Observe without accusation. Offer with care. Shape your gifts like clay and leave room to mend. When you give intentionally, your radiance becomes a bridge. When you scatter light without measure, it can scorch hands that seek to hold it. In quiet corners you will discover others who answer with the same uncommon hunger. These encounters will be rare and patient, and they will feel like finding a map that fits your hands. Conversation with them is not casual exchange but the folding of two maps into a single route. You will learn that scarcity of company keeps the soil fertile for roots that wish to plunge deep. Inside these small gatherings, meaning is traded like sacred currency, and rest is not a concession but a right. Let these gather few who hold your quiet. You enter a crowded place and the air rearranges itself as if something true has arrived. Conversations hesitate and then circle like wary animals. People lean toward whatever they imagine you to be and then pull away because facing honest depth demands a price few will pay. This reaction is not vanity or theater. It emerges from the pressure of clarity you carry, a quiet force that reveals loose edges in ordinary lives. At first you misread avoidance as indifference. Later you learn it as protection. Your steadiness compels others to confront private fractures, and many retreat to familiar comforts instead. Their withdrawal is survival, not cruelty. They prefer rooms that preserve small certainties over spaces that require excavation. Social exchanges change when you are present. Topics are narrow. Humor softens into safety checks. The mundane rhythms that lubricate small talk become strained under the gravity of your witness. You do not create discomfort intentionally. You simply move with a fidelity that calls for deeper engagement, and most conversations are not built for that depth. Intimacy is because your company asks for genuine currency. Casual rapport fails to sustain the architecture of meaning you offer. People who favor light banter may feel overtaxed by the excavation your presence invites. They step back not from dislike but from inability to match the demand. You cultivate quiet disciplines to steward the pressure you carry. A deliberate breath before speaking, a pause to let silence settle into shape, a contained manner that keeps revelations from fracturing into accusation. These practices do not mute your truth. They shape how it arrives so it can be received rather than fracture. When someone withdraws, you learn to listen for the map behind their retreat. Loud laughter might be a mask, but silence often reveals more. Attunement becomes a craft. With practice you translate avoidance into a diagnostic, and compassion grows where judgment tempted you before. Rarely another will remain. These meetings feel like finding a map that matches your hands. Exchanges here are excavations, not diversions. You share pieces that alter both terrains, and bonds formed this way do not rely on proximity but on willingness to descend together. Those alliances require care. Depth leaves both parties raw and integration takes time. After a revealing conversation there is often a quiet period for recovery and assimilation. Patience and clear boundaries support sustained partnership rather than repetitive collapse. You also attract those who seek gain more than growth. Some approach wanting access to your clarity without offering reciprocity. Discernment becomes essential. Generosity remains important, but surrendering prudence exhausts the resource you were meant to steward. Here lies the paradox. The same quality that narrows your company also reveals possibility. Your presence becomes a detector of readiness. Some recoil. Others step forward. Over time a constellation of steady companions appears not by accident but by pattern. They arrive because your manner is both luminous and restrained. This duty is not martyrdom. It is my responsibility. You carry a force that can provoke healing when met honestly. You can soften entrance without diluting content. You can open corridors by choosing how and when to illuminate them. Tend that discernment with patience. Make room for those who come and leave space for those who cannot. Over seasons absence will be filled with intent, and the field you hold will flower slowly into community. Let your practice be iterative. Work in small experiments, offer one honest reflection, observe response, and adjust the pace. Through such calibrated generosity you keep the torch burning and invite companions who are ready for the particular work of deep change. In time those companions will hold parts of you and you will hold parts of them. Guard those ties and honor each quiet step toward wholeness. You stand within a private field where weather is shaped by choice and not by chance. Morning arrives as an inventory you answer with breath and intention. Inside this place your impulses collect like weather and your convictions harden into forms smoothed by tides. Conflict here is an unmasking rather than a skirmish. You sit opposite versions of hesitation and compassion and listen as memory asks for attention and longing seeks only to be seen. Each inquiry is quiet but exacting, and you learn to meet it without hurried defense. The work has no scoreboard. Triumph often looks like lowering an old story so tenderness can step in. What you once feared to lose may become the site where new courage grows. Loss refines you into a container for gentler truths. Night sometimes becomes a parley with an old sorrow. You do not exile it. You permit it space and refuse to appoint it as ruler. Gradually the pressure eases and the fingers that gripped expectations unclench. This release is earned by small mercies you offer yourself during ordinary hours. You invent modest rights to hold your center. A written line returned to. A hand warmed by simple tea. A walk that keeps posture honest. These routines form scaffolding so turbulence can be housed rather than swallowed. Habitual tenderness strengthens endurance. Anger arrives shaped by purpose or by fatigue. You learn to test its usefulness. Does it clarify a boundary or does it merely scorch the ground? Boundaries are not prisons. They are clearings that allow vulnerable life to breathe and reach. Sometimes the fiercest opponent is a minor falsehood you tolerated because it felt familiar. These small untruths will reveal themselves when circumstances press. You begin to name them and to offer them the quiet that invites departure. A companion may join you in the inner field, but these alliances are rare because courage is required to remain. When another chooses depth, the exchange becomes ritual. Two maps fold together and the shared path deepens both terrains. If a road parts, you practice gratitude rather than accusation. Pain carries a slow syntax inviting a mindful reply. When you answer honestly, you create a pattern of responses that bend less toward fracture. Repetition becomes craft and haste yields to steadiness. There are moments that feel like small coronations. Parts of you once dismissed find posture. The interior plan rearranges so compassion occupies the center. Recognition comes not as trumpet but as steadiness in the hands. You will encounter the need to space yourself from relationships that cannot endure excavation. Doors close without malice and soil is conserved for what will thrive. These economies of intimacy are not admissions of failure but acts of tending. Forgiveness serves two functions. Forgiving others prevents cycles of recoil. Forgiving yourself loosens punishment that holds you back. Mercy removes bars while preserving memory. It lightens and orients. As you persist in this work, you learn that struggle and maturation are woven together. One exposes tender places, the other rethreads them with care. There is no deadline. Presence itself is the labor and the reward. Clarity often comes in small removals. A pebble lifted at the edge of a route can make forward motion seem effortless. Steadiness replaces tremor and choices accumulate like birds circling a lamp. When storms return, remember your field is resilient not because it avoids them but because it contains a practice for weathering. Each season offers a translation of fear into task and sorrow into fuel for tenderness. The craft of presence makes your spirit reliable by design rather than by accident. Hold fast to this truth, your fidelity to honest living becomes an atlas for others. In time, steadiness gathers those who choose depth over spectacle. You will not seek a crowd but a congregation of careful hearts. Continue the quiet work and accept that arrival follows patient tending. Be steady. You wake into an hour that feels like summons. The room is unchanged, yet your attention has a new acuity. What once tugged at curiosity now pulls with direction. A bell of certainty rings in the marrow and you move as if following a river traced before memory. Outside, the weather matches the decision inside. Clouds gather with deliberation, then part to reveal a patient sky. Light arrives like a letter carried on wind, its edges marked by instruction rather than consolation. You receive meaning as music that requires translation. It is not a loud prophecy but a steady call that asks little and asks deeply. You practice an economy of presence not from stinginess but from reverence. Time becomes a narrow currency and you spend it where formation can occur. Conversations shift into rites. You speak less and plant more. Each phrase is chosen so it bears weight and leaves room for response. Eloquence without root becomes prettiness, and prettiness without root becomes theft. A map forms from small agreements and precise refusals. Doors open to crossings and others close to preserve soil. Work here is patient and methodical, like laying stone for a bridge. You refuse spectacles that ask you to shrink for entertainment. You decline invitations that delight in noise but starve the soul. The call favors practice over promise. Tasks look ordinary yet hold consequence. Tending a flame, listening with full attention, writing a single truthful line and returning to it later. Each modest act refines the capacity you are entrusted with. Apprenticeship lives in the scene between mundane and sacred. People arrive with varying weather. Some approach with curiosity and stay long enough for true exchange. Some collect fragments and leave when integration begins. Others attempt to control tempo, seeking shortcuts and quick certainties. You read the rhythm of arrival as a test of readiness rather than as rejection. Those who meet you at the pace of excavation walk farther. A ritual emerges for teaching and counsel. You offer frameworks, not answers. You hold space without prescribing a map. You do not give salvation but hand tools for navigation. Humble holding makes the work sustainable. Attempting to fix or rescue drains the soil and leaves you weary. There will be nights when doubt presses like the ocean. You stand on the shore and test the weight of conviction. These nights shape contours of faith. Doubt clarifies rather than annihilates. Sit with uncertainty as you would with a friend bearing news that alters your route. In time, small transformations confirm the path. A neighbor wakes to honesty, a companion opens an apology, a stranger keeps a story. These are quiet gates that reveal new rooms. Cumulative change is knit into a presence that is less lonely because its solitude now shares purpose. You carry the call without spectacle. It draws a particular audience willing to learn the grammar of care and endurance. They may arrive ragged and honest or composed and brittle, but all consent to slow work. Your role is to hold the frame while they practice seeing inside themselves. Return to the world after silence with a softer edge. You have been tempered by contemplation and resolve. When you re-enter public spaces, your light is less broadcast and more lighthouse. It marks a safe channel and invites navigation without demand for repayment. The path is not straight but spiral. Twice you pass similar terrain with a new map. Each loop reveals subtleties earlier journeys could not hold. Celebrate recursions as maturation rather than failure. Remember that a mission without tenderness is hollow. Purpose partnered with mercy becomes a lasting gift. Tenderness keeps flame from becoming a torch that burns indiscriminately. Practice both edge and softness. Balance makes the work transformative rather than destructive. Carry onward with humility and steady care, for each honest action reshapes the ground beneath you and summons others toward quiet courage. Shine on, you arrive at a clearing where silence is heavy with meaning and the air rearranges in recognition of your passage. The earth remembers your steps and offers them back with quiet welcome. Your breath settles into a steady pattern that matches an inner rhythm you could not hear before. Where once you moved hesitantly, now you move with deliberate care, offering attention like a gift that asks nothing yet changes what it touches. Around you, small confirmations gather. A neighbor honors a promise. A stranger returns a lost object with an apology folded into a look. These shifts are not fanfare. They are patient alterations of pattern that reveal the work you carried has taken root. You do not change crowds. You alter soil, and seasons finish what you start. In moments of counsel and private reflection, you become a listener and lens. You ask questions that are simple and exact. People answer in ways that expose hidden structure, and you mirror back what they can hold. This reflection is not an accusation. It is a careful handing of truth so repair can begin. Resistance will rise that feels personal yet often is projection. When others recoil, it is because your steadiness forces them to meet what they have ignored. That jolt can look like anger at you, but usually it is a last effort to preserve old comfort. Meet it with patience. Keep boundaries and carry compassion for frightened parts you meet. There will be hours when labor weighs heavy. You may seek old ease. Remember the small practices that anchor you. The early page you write. The repeated act of kindness done without witness. These disciplines are scaffolding that supports enduring presence. Community emerges slowly. It appears like constellations rather than crowds. People whose lives are altered by how you hold space begin to appear in cycles. They carry their weather in their maps. Together you form a grammar of care. Conversations become rituals of attention and repair. In that circle you trade patience for truth and permit slow becoming without spectacle. Do not confuse humility with invisibility. The modest steadies you and invites others to reveal themselves. When you move forward with measured courage, you elicit reciprocal courage. When you withdraw to tend practice, you model that preservation of self is part of service. The paradox is real, and you learn to navigate it with grace. As seasons pass, your influence moves from flash to channel. People stop seeking novelty and seek quiet guidance. Ripples become current, and the current reaches shores unseen. This widening is less fame and more fidelity. A threshold arrives near the center of your journey, appearing like a film of clarity across a corridor of days. You cross by acting in fidelity with what you have learned rather than in search of gain. Beyond the threshold, the work expands and deepens. You hold space without bearing every burden. You offer maps while others choose routes. Here an invitation appears like light inside the image on the screen before you. What unfolded through these lines continues there, and the voice that guided you speaks again with new layers. That video at the center of this moment contains further revelation and practice that is practical and profound. Watch it as if answering a second calling. If you are moved to remain in this work, consider joining the conversation there. Subscribe and turn on notifications so each new transmission arrives when it calls. These gestures are small, and they help a network of careful hearts keep time together. They are less about numbers and more about signal and readiness. Close this chapter with a quiet vow. Let the vow be a steady return to your page, to count breath, to patient acts that cultivate presence. The path continues beyond words and into living practice. Walk it with clarity and know the light you tend will find its kin. Carry forward an openness to wonder and let small unexpected mercies teach you patient tending and resilient care. Always.